For nostalgic Samsung fans, we decided to recap the evolution of Galaxy S phone cameras from 2010 to the present. The first phone in the Galaxy S series came with a 5-megapixel camera that recorded 720p video and a VGA front camera that could make video calls. The main camera had automatic focus, facial recognition, and panorama shot mode. The following year, Samsung launched the Galaxy S2, a phone with an improved 8-megapixel camera. It also introduced an LED flash, which also allowed taking night photos in a better way, a 2-megapixel selfie camera, and a fun function that turns photo into hand-drawn images. The next model, Samsung impressed its fans with the introduction of the burst shot function, which allowed them to take 20 photos in a burst in 3.3 seconds, with both 1.9-megapixel front camera and the 8-megapixel rear camera. Another model introduced on the Galaxy S3 was the zero shutter lag mode, which ensures that there is no delay between the moment the button is released and the moment the captured image is displayed. The Galaxy S4 impressed even more. It came with a 13-megapixel main camera and a 2-megapixel front camera. Samsung brought the dual-shot mode to this model, which allowed simultaneous photography in the front and rear cameras. Another new function introduced on the S4 was Sound on Shot, which recorded the ambient sound together with the photo, and the Drama Shot function allowed taking several photos in quick succession and combining them in a single image. The Samsung Galaxy S5 is a landmark in the world of smartphones because it's the first phone to come with a 16MP ISO camera. Moreover, the camera had an HDR mode, which also helped to improve the quality of images both in low light and in strong light. The main camera on the Galaxy S6 was 16-megapixel and the front one was 5-megapixel. On the Galaxy S6, Samsung introduced a quick launch function, which allowed users to launch the camera in just 0.7 seconds just by double-tapping the home button. Next, we have the Galaxy S7. The main camera was 12-megapixel and the selfie camera was 5-megapixel, but it also came with a selfie flash mode, which made the screen blink for a brighter selfie photo. This was the first smartphone that had a dual-pixel sensor for the clarity of photos, a feature present in DSLR cameras. The rear camera of the Galaxy S8 was 12-megapixel and in front, there was a dual camera of 8-megapixel and 2-megapixel respectively. Because of the large screen, it might be quite difficult for some to handle the phone with one hand. So Samsung has introduced gesture-based controls to make it easier for users to use the camera. On the Galaxy S9, Samsung introduced a dual aperture camera that automatically adapts to ambient light. Also, the camera's super slow-mo function allowed users to record the video at 960 fps. The Plus variant of this model offered a second 12-megapixel main camera with 2x telephoto lens. Samsung came up with major improvements on the S10, introducing the Super Steady mode, which offered very good video stabilization. Also, this mode came with a triple camera of 12-megapixel wide and 12-megapixel telephoto and respectively 16-megapixel ultra-wide and a 10-megapixel selfie camera. HDR Plus support provided realistic colors to the image recorded by the user. The Plus model added another 8-megapixel selfie camera. Samsung has stepped up its photography capabilities with the S20 series. The 108-megapixel camera on the Galaxy S20 Ultra and a 64-megapixel shooter on the S20 and S20 Plus contributed to the camera's performance. One of the most interesting features introduced was Space Zoom, which combines optic zoom with digital zoom to zoom up to 100x in the case of the S20 Ultra. The S20 series was also the first to capture 8K video and enhance Super Steady with AI-based motion analysis. The Galaxy S20 comes with a triple camera of 12-megapixel, 64-megapixel, respectively 12-megapixel, and a 10-megapixel selfie camera. The Galaxy S20 Plus comes with a quad camera, and the Ultra model comes with a quad camera and a 48-megapixel selfie camera. Samsung launched the Galaxy S20 series in 2021, equipping it with high-quality cameras. The Galaxy S20 Ultra is the first Samsung smartphone to come with 2 telephoto lenses, and in total, it has 5 cameras: a 40-megapixel front camera, a 108-megapixel main rear camera, a 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera, a 10-megapixel telephoto camera, and a 10-megapixel telephoto camera. The other two models, S21 and S21 Plus, have a total of 4 cameras, a 10-megapixel front camera, a 12-megapixel main rear camera, a 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera, and a 64-megapixel telephoto rear camera. At the same time, the Ultra model came with the new 108-megapixel ISO self sensor and non-binding technology, and to improve image quality, Samsung added more AI. What's more, the new Director's View feature allows users to choose the perfect lens for their shot by placing 3 preview screens under the camera's viewfinder. The S22 and S22 Plus models came with the same setup of cameras, namely a 50-megapixel main camera, a 12-megapixel ultra-wide camera, and a 10-megapixel telephoto camera with 3x optical zoom. And on the front, we have a single 10-megapixel main camera. Instead, the S22 Ultra comes equipped with a 108-megapixel main camera, 2 10-megapixel telephoto cameras, one 3x optical zoom, and the other with 10x optical zoom. The selfie camera has a higher resolution of 40 megapixels. As new features, Samsung has introduced nightography, which helps the S22's cameras capture more light and color detail in low-light conditions. A new out-of-frame video mode has also been introduced, allowing the phone to track up to 10 people at once. Also, with Samsung's new Expert RAW app, you can capture images in RAW format for more precise editing. The Galaxy S23 and S23 Plus keep a setup of 3 cameras with a main sensor of 50-megapixel, 12-megapixel ultra-wide, 10-megapixel 3x telephoto, and for the first time after the launch of the S10, Samsung also upgrades the selfie cameras, now being 12-megapixel. On the video side, the Galaxy S23 lineup has been tipped to get a new 30 FPS mode for 8K video recording. Moreover, the major updates are brought by the Ultra model, which receives a new sensor. So, the Galaxy S23 Ultra includes a 200-megapixel main camera with the ISOCELL HP2 sensor, a 12-megapixel ultra-wide sensor, a 10-megapixel 3x telephoto lens, and a 10-megapixel 10x periscope. The evolution of the cameras on the Galaxy series is impressive. From a 5-megapixel main camera on the first Galaxy, Samsung has made the biggest leap in photography in recent years with the new S23 Ultra. Tell us in the comments what do you think about the evolution of the Samsung over time.